Hey, everybody. Today's episode has some musings from me at the beginning, and then we'll get into a really fascinating interview with Josh Chapman, who's a family man, and how he makes connections based on how he was formed in his own family. Hey, everybody. It's Clint, the Ivy League trucker. I am recording this segment while I'm getting unloaded at an oil distributor. So I'm on a decent quality mic, but I've left the windows open and you'll hear just the sounds that happen as forklifts run around and things get loaded and unloaded. I call this the Sermon on the Mount and Human Flourishing, or what it feels like to be a recovering performance addict. One of the themes of the podcast is loss and self-reinvention. I recently read an essay in The Dispatch. The Dispatch is a website, newsletter, and media outlet that is conservative and traditional, but also has, I think, real depth to it on life. And they do a weekly newsletter called Dispatch Faith. And this week's installment was an article by Michael Renaud and Amy Julia Becker called Finding the Good Life in an Age of Designer Babies and High Achievers. And the reason I bring that up is it talks about the Sermon on the Mount, which is Jesus' teaching from the Mount, with the Beatitudes as part of that. And if you're not familiar, part of the Beatitudes start with, Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh, et cetera, et cetera. And even as a Christian, I always thought of those as, okay, if you're poor or you suffer or you're persecuted or you mourn, things will be better in the future. Ultimately, in the second coming of Christ and the kingdom of God, where we're all redeemed and made perfect with God. And that's not really a full understanding of it. And Amy calls out this dynamic. I'll just quote here a little bit. Yet, whether we pursue the good life through moralism, meritocracy, or materialism, many of us still find ourselves wanting. The sociological data indicate an increase in anxiety and depression among Americans in recent years. The most recent World Happiness Report shows Americans at the top of the global heap in terms of income and only in the middle when it comes to a sense of well-being. We are lonely and disconnected. We are sad and worried. Many of us seem to be discovering that the American good life isn't able to deliver on its promise. And this pushes us back to older teachings of what is a good life. And you can get to maybe a good life is to be morally correct. Maybe a good life is to be generous, etc. But I think the teachings of the Beatitudes go even further than that, because Amy talks about her daughter who was born with Down syndrome, and the day she was born, all of her future dreams of what that daughter would do and experience as a normal girl growing into a woman were dashed. And she went from that place to now seeing that through the eyes of her faith, that the Beatitudes really are about a state of being of people. And she refers to a book called The Sermon on the Mount and Human Flourishing by Jonathan Pennington. And I'll quote from that too. He writes that Jesus' statements in the Beatitudes are a pronouncement based on observation, quote, that a certain way of being in the world produces human flourishing. We might translate Jesus' blessings with the phrase, the good life belongs to. According to Jesus, the good life belongs to those who know that they are needy, vulnerable, and dependent creatures. The good life belongs to ones who are honest about pain and loss and receptive to comfort. The good life belongs to those who live within limits. The good life belongs to those who are dissatisfied with moralism, materialism, and meritocracy. The good life belongs to people like her daughter who has Down syndrome, but she reports deeply experiences joy relationally with others, even very aware of her limitations as a young adult with Down syndrome. And when I think about that in my life, I think about how I really wasn't applying the deep learnings of Christianity to my life and how I pursued things. And I believed intellectually everything pretty much the Bible had to say, but I wasn't living it in the sense that I valued performance and then the material and financial blessings that that performance could deliver. And I valued it so much that when things started to go sideways, I didn't put my hand up for help because I was so scared it was all crashing to the ground. And I was just paralyzed by that. And if I just put my hand up and a number of times along the way, relationally with my wife primarily and with others who were good counselors, I could have prevented a lot of pain and loss and suffering. And I think those observations about the nature of humanity that Jesus talks about in the Beatitudes are really deeply true. Those who understand our limitations and have the humility, no matter how smart you are, no matter how successful you are, no matter how accomplished you are in any realm, but have the humility to know that they're human, they're limited, and they often will need help. And suffering and loss will be common to all, at least at the end, at the grave, where we all lose. So that's what I'm thinking about as I sit here being offloaded. And I'm really glad and satisfied with where I am now. Maybe satisfied is not the right word. I'm accepting of it. And I see the wisdom of accepting my current station in life. And it allows me to see people more fully, I think. And hopefully they can receive me the same way. Gee, I wish I had come up with that stuff by myself. But like we're saying, I'm limited and I certainly couldn't have come up with that by myself. And more than that, it took more than just writing in a book for me to understand this or even begin to grasp it. It took a lot of loss, self-induced loss through financially, personal, and business bankruptcy, through the loss of our house in a short sale, through the humiliation of having to work in fields that were well below what I was trained and educated for me to even begin to get this. And I think I only am beginning to get it. And I wish I could say I'm completely changed. I'm still me, and it still hurts to think about what was lost. And I have to fight against the ruminations of where I would be and what I would have and what I would be doing and what my wife and I would have and be doing at this stage of life. I suppose that will always be with me. But that's not the path that God ordained for my life and our life. So I'm accepting of where I'm at, and I'm looking to see what the positives are and what the paying it forward with some hard-earned wisdom looks like.
We engage with each one of the kids and we have them sign essentially like a media contract, right? Of course, our kids in like sixth and seventh, they're like, I'm the only kid without a phone. Well, we knew some other parents that were also doing the same thing. We're like, no, you're not the only kid without a phone. And
Now, you've got these rules.
yeah,
Have you read Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation
I
or
believe
heard about it?
I believe my wife has read it.
It's all about the deleterious effects of cell phones on youth
Yeah,
over the last 15 years. What it's generating right now, and it's very he's a social scientist from NYU. It's all very
yeah,
data driven.
yeah.
And all the rise of anxiety and depression and all that stuff from all the screen time. And it's basically almost single-handedly starting to get the phones out of the schools.
So recently in the news, Mark Zuckerberg, Meta,
Right.
was testifying. I thought it was a clip from one of the experts that was testifying on that. It was a teacher. But went into neuroscience, and he basically had said, not only is it destroying kids as far as anxiety and all of that other stuff, it's actually making them less smart. And they
Yeah,
said
I heard that one too.
Generation Alpha is the first generation that has underperformed in all known metrics from the previous generation. And that could never be said until now, right?
Not in modern history. Yeah. Hey, everybody, this is Clint, the Ivy League trucker. And today we have the pleasure of speaking to a friend of mine, Josh Chapman. Josh and I have known each other at church for many years, and we're from slightly different parts of the country. Josh is a big family man. He's an engineer. He's also served in our diaconal ministries, which for those of you who aren't church type folks, deacons are the folks who help people with practical needs in the church and also outside the church, but mostly folks within the church who need practical, physical, financial, emotional and support. And they really get involved in a lot of people's lives that way. So I thought it'd be great to have Josh with us. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Good, Clint. How are you?
I'm good. I am here. We are waiting for the next snow event in the Mid-Atlantic. I'm in West Virginia, fortunately heading south tomorrow morning. Josh is stuck in the Philly area, so I think you're going to see some fluffies tomorrow, huh?
Yeah, we're supposed to get 14 to 18, but probably end up getting half of that. So we'll see.
Yeah, but you're a flinty New Englander, so that's nothing for you, right?
Yeah, we used to get 12 inches of snow and have a 2-hour delay and school the next morning. So
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah. So just tell the folks a little bit, just kind of how you grew up, how you kind of got to where you are today with your family.
Sure. So I am the second of 4 kids. I have an older brother and 2 younger, but not very much smaller sisters. My parents are still married, alive and kicking. Grew up in a household where it was very relationally rich. Had a great relationship with my siblings and with my parents. I attribute that a lot to my parents. Really, what was really important was how we treated one another.
Okay.
So there was this spirit of, like my brother was my best friend until I turned 16 and got my license before he did, and that created a little bit of bitterness there. But my siblings and I were all really close, and I kind of attribute it to in the summer of '88, my dad sold our house in Rochester, New York, and he sold his business, and we went traveling across the country for 100 straight days camping.
Wow.
We just had a pop-up tent trailer, and you name the national park, we went to it.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, drove as far west as California, went up and down Route 1, as far south as Mexico, and we actually drove all the way through British Columbia and hit the southernmost town of Haidt, Alaska, driving,
Wow.
and then went back
That's
south.
amazing. You drove to Alaska.
Yeah, drove to Alaska. Haidt is the only town that you can drive to. Everywhere else in Alaska, you have to take either a boat or a plane. And then we went across the northern United States, hitting, all the major national parks.
Great.
Yeah. So that really planted this seed. So we were 6, 8, 10, and 12. So I was 10. That really planted the seed for an incredibly tight relationship with my siblings and whatnot. And so, yeah, just really felt blessed to grow up in a Christian home. Yeah, my parents just very, very relationally rich. Yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Did your wife come from a similar family culture or was it different?
Um, her family, so she is one of 6.
Wow.
She has 2 older sisters, an adopted older sister, and then it's herself, and then a younger brother and a younger sister. So their age gap was pretty big from the oldest to youngest. Their family, not as much as far as the relationability, or whatever the right word is. They were not as close, although physically they're really close. My mother-in-law is a couple golf ball drives away, and they're all
Okay.
in the same town. So physically they're very close together. But as far as the depth, relationally and emotionally, probably not as strong as my siblings and I. But
Okay.
I
Okay.
think that really comes from my wife's parents, that I think that was a little bit of a struggle relating to the kids, and they're just generally not as relational folks.
Yeah, I find it fascinating how families are different. Like in our case, my wife's family is this huge, close clan. A lot of cousins who are still, who have adult children now and are still close, right?
Mhm.
It's always, first cousins once removed who know each other and all that.
Mhm.
Whereas I grew up in a much smaller family, just me and my brother. And my father had an older brother, but he was in Detroit. I grew up in Rochester, New York, but we both live in the Philly area now. And then he had older brother that we saw more of his, those cousins. But I really haven't kept up those relationships. Like I've kind of gotten sucked into my wife's family, which is both personally and geographically mostly very close, mostly in the Philly area.
Mhm.
So it's interesting how you adapt to it. Here's one thing. They say that the women, in families are the ones that keep the social relations going and keep kind of the family culture going. Is that what you find, or is it not that way?
I would say my wife is phenomenal at keeping in touch, like with her college suite mates and other friends and everything else. And so
Yeah.
she's much better about doing that, whereas I'm somewhat out of sight, out of mind kind of person. But hey, if there's something planned, I am there and I will pick up right where we left off, right? Like one of my college buddies, I probably haven't seen him in 10 years, and it was probably 10 years after school, and we picked up like we had just graduated, right? So it doesn't take me that long to engage. And, my dad is an absolute character, very engaging, very dynamic with people and everything else. Whereas my mom is a little bit more on the sidelines.
Hmm.
And it's just, I think, a personality type thing. Right. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
So you gravitate more towards it sounds like you gravitate more towards your dad than your mom.
yeah, I would say so. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, my dad's very extroverted, you know, life of the party kind of type thing. But, you,
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and I've told people, when if I could choose 5 people, alive or dead, that I could sit down and have a beer with and talk for an hour, my dad has always been one of them.
Well, that's a real gift to have your dad as your father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. My dad was he was kind and gentle, a little quieter, very personable though, and very social with his group of friends. He had really good my mom and dad had good relationships in the church. They had left the church that my father grew up in after he got out of the Navy and came back home.
mhm.
And then my uncle and my grandparents stayed in that church. And there was a little bit of separation after that. But I knew my dad had great relationships with his friends because we saw a lot of them. And my mom was 1,000 miles away from her family. She had grown up in the South. But but then for me, I had a really warm relationship with my father, but he died when I was 25.
Oh, wow.
And I had like gone to college and I was in the Navy, and I just didn't see much of him after high school.
Hmm.
And yeah, I do miss him a lot, especially around parenting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he loved children. Like children's ministries, children's things in the church, helping kids and stuff. He loved that. So he would have really enjoyed our grandparents, or his grandchildren. So so you grew up in Rochester, and then how did you become an engineer and meet your wife?
So I knew I wanted to be an engineer before I even knew what it was. Like I was the kid that would, y- you know, take apart a drill to see how it functioned
How it
and
worked?
and then put it
Yeah.
back together. My mom still reminds me of this story. I think I was in 7th grade and she had an old Singer sewing machine, and the little pedal that acts as the throttle went out, and she's like, "Josh, instead of doing the dishes, can you somehow try to fix this?" And,
Uh-huh.
took it apart, and I'm like, "Oh, clearly it's this spring that broke. Let me just throw in a wire and fix it." And she was just absolutely flabbergasted. So I was always drawn to math and physics and all that stuff. So I knew I wanted to be an engineer, and went to Grove City College. Ironically, my father went to Grove City, and my oldest son is at Grove City. So we've got 3 generations there. But I always knew I wanted to be an engineer. And so graduated with my BSME, and then had a job traveling a lot, and even some internationally. Like I was in India the 7th month of my marriage. Uh, and that became really, really difficult working for a polymer flooring company. And then I decided to make a career change and go towards the professional engineering track. So it's similar to like someone who would pass the bar or a CPA exam, going through and getting your professional engineering license. And then once you get it in your home state, it's much easier to get it in other states. And so I started to do that, and a mutual client hooked me up with another engineer, and he made me an offer you'd have to break both my legs not to take, working from home. This was 20 years ago, and never looked back. And at this point now, he is retired. I own the company. So we're a small consulting engineering firm. We do mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design. So for the layman, basically anything in a building that makes it tick, we design. So the electrical distribution, the lighting, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, the whole nine. So
Gotcha.
yeah. So
Uh, So that's cool. So I guess stereotypically, sometimes you think of engineers as not the most social people. Like they're into their math and their drawings and their systems and everything. But you seem to be you are a very relational guy, which you got from your
yeah.
family culture. How has that played out in your career? Do you find you're the one pulling everybody together on projects, or what?
I mean, it has certainly helped me a lot in my career. And yes, you are correct. Most people are like, most engineers are introverts. Well, I'm extroverted. I really, that's probably the thing that I like the most, is in engaging with the customers on most days. Some customers can drive me nuts, but it also means I can handle myself well in meetings and inspections and stuff like that. So it certainly does help a lot. And also if you're the face of the company, which I am now, it certainly helps a lot
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
to be able to be relational. And then also certainly in my role as a deacon, that also helps a lot to be able to relate to other folks as well. So
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the so in our church, I was an elder, which is kind of a spiritual leadership position. And then the deacons are doing all these helps ministries, which is a fancy way of saying helping people out with the practical, financial, family, whatever their practical needs are. And it involves counseling, it's a lot. And,
mhm.
and a lot of it is behind the scenes because, confidentiality and things like that. But you've been doing this for a good while, right?
Yeah, I started training in 2006 and was
Okay.
ordained in early 2007. So it's been about 20 years.
And you're the chair now, right?
Yeah, this is my second 4-year stint as chair. So, so yeah, I mean, and at our church, we've got, let's see, we've got, I think it's like 14 or 15 deacons and deaconesses, which I'm going to use the term deaconess, but it's a commissioned person. Most of them are female. We do have one commissioned male
Right.
that
Yeah.
that basically commissioned helpers for the deacons. So we've got a big crew. We have been so incredibly blessed with the resources to be able to help folks, and part of that started from a diaconal ministry, man, probably 30 years ago. We started a thrift store, and the bylaws of the thrift store is that half of the proceeds go to the diaconate to basically meet individual needs. So, as well as our
Yeah.
congregation contributes to that.
Right. But that throws off cash in addition to what the members of the church give.
Correct. Correct.
And they give some great. So give folks kind of a day in the life stuff that the deacons do? Like, what do they get involved in? What's it gonna look like?
So usually what it looks like is we get either notified or someone approaches us about a financial need. So it could be anything like simple, like someone, everything is so expensive these days. And a
Right.
lot of
Right.
folks are living paycheck to paycheck. And
Yep.
so you have a family that, I don't know, the boiler goes out and that's $6,000 that they don't have.
Right.
And we don't want them to take on this debt, and that 6,000 becomes a payoff of 12,000 over the next 10 years. We don't want
Right.
that. We don't want that to happen. And so we'll come in and we do an intake, which essentially we sit down with them. We get a chance to find out how they're doing, to pray with them and go over what the financial situation looks like. And when we see a viable need, we then the two individuals from the diacon that are meeting with them, we go back and we present the case and we say, hey, is this a valid need that we want to meet? We vote on it, and then be able to go through and provide the money to be able to do that. And so sometimes you have that. Other times you have folks that are really struggling, and you sit down with them and you're like, okay, yes, financially, your household is a disaster, but you can clearly see that their marriage is a disaster, right? And
Mhm.
it's like,
Right.
hey, you not only need budget counseling, you need marriage counseling, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so it's like walking alongside those folks, pointing them to Jesus, walking alongside them, helping their needs to be met. And a lot of times that is providing counseling assistance outside of just financial assistance. You know,
So, do you guys do all the counseling yourselves, or do you sometimes pull in other professionals and stuff, or
w- we
how's that work?
we most most of the time, unless it's like budget coaching or budget
Mhm.
counseling,
Right.
when it's biblical counseling, we are not equipped. We're First of all, most of us have full-time jobs outside of
Right. Yeah.
this volunteer work. Some of us are retired. So
Right.
no,
Right.
in that case, what we do is we send them to pre-approved biblical counselors that are professionals to be able
Mhm.
to do that. So,
Okay.
and we basically we never want we never want finances to be a reason that people don't get the counseling that they need. So a lot of times it will be like, hey, you have a $10 copay, but we're paying the other 90%. And we do that for a certain number of sessions and that kind of thing. So we really try to take away the, hey, I can't afford this even though I need it. So we do
Yeah.
that. Some folks are right at the knife's edge as far as making ends meet. And so a lot of times
Uh-huh.
they need accountability. They need someone to check in with them each month to help them go over their finances. We do a lot of that. And then we also have folks that are just plain old in crisis. And those are the hardest ones where, what's going on in their family, whether it's a sick parent or a sick child, or they're underemployed and they have health issues and they have mental health issues.
Mhm.
Those are really difficult, and there's no straightforward road, you know, roadmap to walk them through. So a lot of times it's coming alongside them and helping them to navigate what they have, but it can be exceedingly difficult to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great work. I think, I think for folks who, don't come from a church background, or maybe those even that do, it's a lot of this work goes on all the time. And it
Yeah.
really is the members of the church are a family, basically, at the end of the
Hmm.
day. And it's just us trying to get organized about helping each other. And you guys are often very much the unsung heroes. The elders often are a little more public or saying stuff or doing stuff, but the deacons, by definition, most of it is pretty confidential.
Yeah.
And it's going out. We when I was, there is some coordination sometimes between the elders and the deacons around, you know, what we would call a pastoral case. You guys call it diaconal case, and it overlaps. And sometimes we coordinate and stuff, but lots of times you guys are just making it happen, and the results are borne out in their lives over the years. And do you guys are you seeking like the skills package for someone to do that kind of work? Do you guys tend to look for people who are really good relationally, or is it just you're good at practical stuff, or is there like a profile?
I mean, certainly, you know, most people that we seek are already doing diaconal stuff, right?
Okay.
It's they're helping their neighbor. It's they're helping their immediate family. It's they're quick to volunteer and step in, right? They're also generally approachable and relational, right?
Yeah.
But typically we see people that are doing it in an unofficial capacity, and and when we ask for recommendations, we want people that are of good moral character, uh, like someone would vouch for their character, and also that they've seen do diaconal stuff, right? Like,
Right. Right.
I'm probably the only handyman on my wife's side of the family. So she's got four sisters and a brother. Her mother-in-law, her dad was blind at the age of 7 and passed away
Oh.
10 years ago. And so,
Mm.
even if I wasn't a deacon, it's still helping my sister-in-laws do stuff and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And it would be someone like that. You hear of, oh, this person's helping their neighbor, or they're going to help their sister-in-law, or whatever. We would look sort of for those type of people. But
Yeah, people are already demonstrating it,
yeah,
their
yeah,
skill and passion for it in their life, and then
yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of identifying them and saying, "Okay, maybe we could formalize this a little bit and try to multiply what you're doing."
yeah.
And do you guys get involved in training other people how to do that sort of stuff?
I mean, every time we take on a new class, like right now, we're taking on. Hopefully, if everyone in the class joins, I think we're going to have one, two, three, four, potentially four more people join. And so
Okay.
we go through a fairly lengthy training process. Like, one of the books that we highly, highly recommend is The Road to Jericho by Tim Keller, Mercy Ministries. And
Put that in the show notes, reference to that.
yeah, so Tim Keller does a phenomenal job in that book, and it really highlights the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? And
Could you quickly tell that for folks who
yeah,
are
sure,
not Christians?
sure. So the story in the Bible is that there is a Jew who is on the road to Jericho, which is a very steep, dangerous road, and he gets robbed, and he's just laying in the road. And so you first have like a rabbi come by, and he just crosses on the other side of the road, wants nothing to do with them. Another person comes by, doesn't want anything to do with him, because if you touch him, he's unclean. And
Uh-huh.
and so a Samaritan comes by, and Samaritans despise the Jews, and the Jews despise the Samaritans. And the Samaritan stops, picks up the Jew, puts him on his donkey, carries him to the inn, nurses him back to health, feeds him, and basically goes to the innkeeper, "Hey, I've got to go. Here's the money for his stay, and if he needs anything, provide it, and I will pay you when I come back." Right? And so Jesus is highlighting this parable, and he basically, and I missed the beginning of it where someone was saying, well, who's my neighbor? Right. And so this is how Jesus is describing who someone's neighbor is. And so who was the neighbor? Was it the Jew that passed by, or was it the Samaritan? And it was the Samaritan because he had mercy on him. Right. And so Tim Keller highlights how sometimes mercy looks like going completely out of your way, nuking your schedule, like forgetting your own to-do list because the Lord has put this in front of you. And sometimes it takes resources, it takes time, it takes all of these things to really come alongside someone and love someone. So we go through that book, we talk about it, we talk about case studies, we also look at scripture and that kind of stuff as we go through our training process.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, and that's where the phrase "the Good Samaritan," being a good Samaritan, comes from. And certainly, Christianity is not the only faith tradition that has mercy in it. That's for sure. But that's a key reference, for us. Have you ever just struggled with being able to connect with people that you're working with?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that we all,
and what?
I'm sure we all have people in our life or in our family that are just really tough to love.
Okay.
And so occasionally you get folks that, whether it's personality, whether, that they are difficult to love, but we are still called to love them.
Yeah, yeah. It's that family relationship. And for all your parents out there, you know what that's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit. So, how has this all played out with your kids? So what I've heard you talk about is you grow up in a very relational family. You're a relational guy. You
Mhm.
know, so now and it's interesting. You and I are not like buds, but we know each other.
Mhm.
At church. But I've always looked at your family, and my first thought of you and your wife is family man.
Yeah.
He has a big family. He loves his kids. It's so clear. Like there was a
Mhm.
moment in a service a month ago where you were there and just the way you put your hand on your daughter's shoulder and she leaned into you, I'm like 5 rows back. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that's very clear.
Yeah.
That's a loving father and his children know that they're loved.
Yeah.
It's just those little things. That's kind of my first
Yeah.
and strongest impression of you.
Mhm.
So I'm sure you're trying to pass all that stuff on to your kids. How's that go?
So, yeah, I mean, so for the listeners, my kids are 19, 17, 15, 12, and 9.5. So we've got basically a 9.5 year gap from oldest to youngest. And yeah, it's, you know, people would always tell us, oh, wait till they turn 13 and they want nothing to do with you. Well,
Uh huh.
my particularly my oldest son, he always wanted to hang out with us. I would probably say up until he was 17, where it was just like sometimes we'd be like, okay, it's time for me to hang out with mom now.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. So and we like to play board games and ping pong and do all this stuff. And so it has been good that the kids see that, hey, first of all, adults in general, you try to teach them, hey, when an adult is talking to you, you make eye contact, you engage with them. Like it's
Mhm.
totally okay to talk to adults. Do not be afraid, right? And I think part of that
Mhm.
is just the relational thing rubs off. Like so so my youngest is 4, and we have a helper come just to help around the house with Laurel. The helper's name was Bethany. And so we're at dinner and my youngest goes, "Bethany's pregnant." And we're like, that's cute. I'm sure she isn't. The thought popped in her head. Well, sure enough, the next week we see Bethany, and she's like, "Did your daughter tell you I was pregnant?" We're like, "Oh my gosh!" So here she is, the 4-year-old. They're hanging out like folding laundry or whatever, and they're engaging, and yeah. So my youngest knew that Bethany was pregnant, but
Before it was like public?
yeah, before it's public. I mean,
Wow.
now granted, if you're telling a 4-year-old, might as well be public.
Yes.
you, but
Yeah.
but anyway, I mean, we're trying to teach that, but I tell you what, the phones and social social media and everything.
Yeah. What about all that? How are you wading into and the whole social media and the phones and all that stuff? You got kids through the whole age range, right?
We
So
do.
what do you guys do? You guys have rules or what?
Oh yeah, we engage with each one of the kids and we have them sign essentially like a media contract, right? And
Okay.
we also are big fans of there's this movement called Wait Till 8th, which is do not get your kid a phone until at least 8th grade. And
So not
so
8 years old, eighth grade.
oh my gosh, 8 years old? No way. So wait until 8th is 8th grade. Of course, our kids in like, 6th and 7th, they're like, I'm the only kid without a phone. Well, we knew some other parents that were also doing the same thing. We're like, no, you're not the only kid without a phone.
And
And
your kids are in public school?
our kids, our kids are in public school. That's another whole conversation. They, as of this year, they are currently still in public school.
So you've got these rules.
Yeah.
Have you read Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation
I
or
believe
heard about it?
I believe my wife has read it.
It's all about the deleterious effects of cell phones on youth,
Yeah. Yeah,
over the last 15 years. What it's generating right now, and it's very he's a social scientist from NYU. It's all very
yeah,
data driven,
yeah,
and all the rise of anxiety and depression and all that stuff from all the screen time.
yeah.
And it's basically almost single-handedly starting to get the phones out of the schools.
Well, and so there's also that. There's also so recently in the news, Mark Zuckerberg, Meta,
Right.
was testifying, and I, I thought it was a clip from one of the experts that was testifying on that. It was a teacher. But went into neuroscience, and he basically had said not only is it destroying kids as far as anxiety and all of that other stuff, it's actually making them less smart. And they
Yeah,
said
I heard that one too.
Generation Alpha is the first generation that has underperformed in all known metrics from the previous generation, and that could never be said until now, right?
Not in modern history, yeah.
Yeah,
And the big change is the wholesale saturation of screens in the educational environment.
yeah. It's
And it's like, it's just that's and I mean, I'm being a little I think within a year it's gonna be or soon it's gonna be that is what's messing it up, is this screen time. I was talking to Robert, who's a law student,
yeah,
a nephew of mine on the earlier podcast, and he said at law school and at college now, and his wife is an elementary school teacher at a very good private school. They say they're starting to go back to the blue books. They're starting to go back to written exams because that's the only way you can tell. If you let them take it home, do it on the computer, or even do it on, on some electronic device in the classroom, you can never really tell if it's really theirs. And so they're basically going back to, no, you're gonna come, you're gonna sit in this room and you're gonna write out your answers in like what you and I did when we were, young,
yeah.
because then it's really coming from you. It's like a weird Back to the Future thing.
Well, it's like kids wouldn't recognize cursive if it was written in front of their face. Because they literally don't see it anymore. Let alone I don't even know if it's taught.
So for your so back to your family. So you're kind of engaging with this contract. So
Mhm.
what's the contract? It's like they self-limit, or what do they do?
This is what it is. So we have a central charging station, a docking station that's in our room, our bedroom, and it's up against it's up against the wall when you walk in. The kids that do have phones are it's supposed to be there overnight. So no phones at night. It is also they are not allowed to have a password or a lock on their phone that we don't know about. And we also reserve the right to ask for their phone at any moment, at any time, any day, without question, and be able to go through it. So I don't know, I guess it was 2 nights ago. I, I got a 15-year-old son and
Right.
just, walked into his room and I said, I want to see your phone. And so I got his phone and took it into the other room and try to do a deep dive of what is he looking at? Are the text messages above board? Are they, and basically it's, you've got to understand, and we've also told them, you got to tell your friends, my parents may be looking at this. You cannot text me anything that you're not okay with them basically seeing. So we have reserved the right to go through. Also, there's no social media. I think once they turn 16, they're allowed one social media app. So my daughter who's now 17 was playing club volleyball and she really wanted Instagram. And so we said, okay, that's the one social media that you get. Now they all have screen time rules, so it's limited how much they can see it per day. Once they exceed their limit, the app shuts down. They also have downtime where basically the phone, they can text my wife and I, their siblings, and that's pretty much it once they hit downtime. So you can control that. Now granted, kids are kids and there's going to be back doors and all that other stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
We've had to navigate that, but the goal really is to get them in the habit of self-regulating themselves. So for example, my 19-year-old, he's off to college. He always was really good in handling the social media. He kind of told me, he's like, man, Dad, I wish I grew up in the 80s like you. Sounded so much more fun. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but anyway, I'm glad you're nostalgic for old school stuff. And so like you know, we unlocked his phone and, encouraged him to be, have accountability while he's in college and all of that stuff. And he has not struggled with that or with other
Well, you're
things.
you're well ahead of the curve there.
What?
I'm impressed. I'm just impressed with you guys' whole system. It's interesting because my kids are basically 16 years ahead of yours.
Okay.
So my oldest is 33 and just had
Okay.
the third kid. And then the youngest is 29, almost 30. And the middle one is 32 and married. So oldest married with 3 kids, second married, kid on the way in a month. And then the youngest, 29-year-old woman. And it was interesting. The whole phones and the texting and everything was just kind of coming in when they were hitting high school. And I was resistant. We were always like the late adopters, some were saying. But then when we finally gave them a flip phone with texting, because there was no smartphone yet. But I was like, oh my gosh, texting makes things so convenient. You can have like 5 people on the text chain and all that. But it was more like the home computer on the desk was what they were dealing with.
Yeah.
In high school, in junior high and high school.
Yeah.
And I was just at that point, this is around like 19 or around 2009, 10.
Yeah.
The smartphone launches in 2007. The iPhone comes out in 2007. And then 2012 is when the forward-facing camera, selfie camera comes in. And that's when all the mental health starts to really go down among the youth after people, streaming themselves and doing all that stuff. But my kids are just old enough to have kind of dodged the whole kind of social media was everything, when you were really young.
Yeah.
And so your kids are more often it's the ones who are just slightly older than your oldest who are like in their early 20s right now,
Mhm.
that group is in rough shape.
Mm.
They are in very rough shape from the social media
Yeah.
overall.
And yeah, because I think you had to be very on top of realizing how bad it was. But like
Yeah.
we knew countless examples where there was one I don't even remember the name of the family, but they were having family movie night and it was a Friday night and everyone was fine and dandy. They're watching the movie and the one like 18-year-old gets up and checks her phone and you know someone on Instagram posted that they were I don't know out rollerblading or having a night on the town and all of a sudden if she didn't look at her phone she was totally happy and everything was fine and all of a sudden she sits down and she's like depressed and sad and anxious and all that stuff because she's missing out and it's like
FOMO.
yeah, it's FOMO, it's envy, it's all of those things, right?
Yeah.
Which back in the day, hey, if you weren't at the mall with your friends, you didn't know about it, right?
Right. Yeah,
It,
it didn't exist. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Yeah. I think what we're seeing now with you talk about the Mark Zuckerberg trial in Los Angeles, it's the first, Section 203 or whatever it is of the Communications Act still treats all the social media platforms are still treated legally by US law as nascent technologies, and they don't have the same restrictions for like, you know, speech and politics and all that stuff, like fair balance on TV and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Th- But the exact opposite is true. The social media platforms have far more influence and reach and power than any TV or radio network that was ever conceived of.
Right.
And so Congress has still not caught up. And I think in the next 5 years, I think we're going to see a big, the Jonathan Haidt book, all these studies. Probably Facebook is going to get some kind of major slap that, they were actually pursuing children and trying to influence them. And I listened to another podcast with a guy named Scott Galloway, who is really into addressing the crisis among lost young men. And, it's the social media platforms are basically designed to kind of, monetize attention to pull people out of the real world in a dysfunctional way. And I think it's going to change. I think society's going to get there pretty soon
Yeah,
because the evidence is pretty stacked up that it's
awful.
it's destroying our politics. It's really hurting our society,
Yeah,
making us hate each other,
right.
because it's just designed to feed you more of what you like. And then if it's politics or social stuff, it's just an outrage machine because that keeps you engaged.
Right.
And it's really bad. It's really, really bad.
I mean, I've read there's certain school districts that have totally banned phones from the
Oh, it's
first
starting.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
fr
starting.
from the first bell to the last bell,
Yeah,
and
you put it in a lockbox, you don't get it. I mean, you can get at it in an emergency or something, but you don't get it until you leave.
yeah, and the districts that have done that have seen remarkable improvements
Yeah.
in behavior and everything else. I mean, like you go to any middle school principal across the country and you ask them what their discipline issues are, and they will say the worst day of the week is Monday because you're dealing with retaliation of what happened on social media over the weekend. And that is most of what their discipline issues are is what's going on online and carrying over into the school. So, back to some of those rules. So my 12-year-old, we have an old iPod Touch, basically an old phone that doesn't have a number. It only works on Wi-Fi and it only stays at home. Well, she has to ask permission if she can text her friends. And so she will come to us and be like, "Hey, can I text my friend?" And we'll be like, "Okay, you can spend 20 minutes texting your friend." And so they and it is always a fight because the iPad, there's the iTouch, and then there's also people that their parents, I don't want to use the word don't care, but they get a phone at 10 years old, which they are totally not equipped emotionally or mentally
No, they're not.
to be able to handle that. I mean, I remember when my now 17-year-old, similar thing. She had basically an iTouch that would only work at home, and she had to keep it at home. And she didn't, she was getting upset that people weren't responding to her texts. And,
Yeah.
and you're just like, whoa, this isn't instantaneous. Well, it can be instantaneous.
Yeah, but it's all the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. And just not understanding, like, you and I both know that if I send you a text or an email in all caps, I'm shouting, right? Well, they don't understand that, right? And so there's a lot of things that they simply don't understand, that they're not equipped, nor should they have to navigate at 10 and 12, you know?
The issue is we've made children far more, since when you and I were kids, we've made the world much safer physically for them. Like you
Mhm.
look at, but then we just did this massive, uncontrolled free for all of exposing them to massive psychological and social danger online.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're 50 years from now, they're going to look back at it. Like when I told my daughter that seat belts in cars, like from a consumer product safety standpoint, seat belts in cars were not mandatory until like 1966. The car was around, in a fairly mass way from the late 20s,
Right.
all the way to, it's like 35 years. Your pink little body would slam against a hard metal dash and you would die, you know,
Yeah.
and the automakers resisted the seat belts, the cigarette makers resisted regulation. It's the same. She was shocked. She's like, "What? No seat belts?" I'm like, "Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people died."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so same thing here. I think we're going to look back at and I do recommend the Jonathan Haidt book, The Anxious Generation, for it is
Mhm.
a watershed book. It's changing the culture.
Yeah.
So let me kind of move us. We've covered a lot of great stuff. I love your relational aspects. I love the diaconal work in helping people. I'm This is the first time I've heard a current parent talk about how they run the social media and the texting and all that, which I'm sure that didn't start overnight. You had to set the groundwork for that right early on.
Yeah, we were strongly encouraged by multiple folks. One that stands out was a guy at church, and he had two daughters, and they gave him phones and social media to their oldest one.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, Josh, if you lived in downtown Philly or downtown New York City, you would not open up your front door and just have random strangers come in and talk to your kids. And essentially, unregulated social media is like doing that. It's like just
Right.
inviting total random strangers off the street to talk to your kid. And he was like, whatever you do, delay it as long as possible and have restrictions, because if you let it go unfettered, and what was happening with his 16-year-old had willy-nilly social media, and then they tried to clamp down, and
That's really hard.
it went over like a lead balloon. And then we have other parents of kids that are older than mine. They basically told especially their daughter, and the one thing about phones, just a quick little sidebar, like my sons, they mostly wanted to play games with their other friends. Whereas with girls, it is often the Instagram, the Snapchat, the how you look, those, oh my gosh, it came out in
Yeah.
one of the court cases, that basically Instagram had these filters so it can make you look to the nines, which is not reality, right? And
No,
so
not.
it's, I think, was it in your other, he was in one of the podcasts where it's like, hey, your child isn't doing well, but on Instagram it looks like they're doing fantastic, right? It is such
We
a
went through that with our daughter when she was struggling, really struggling at college for a short period. Her Facebook looked like everything was fine
right,
because people don't post the negative stuff. No one
yeah,
wants to do that, but that's not real life.
right, right, absolutely. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what you and your wife have done with your family. I'm gonna wrap us out. You ready for a lightning round?
yeah, sure.
Here we go. Goofiest thing one of your kids ever said to you.
I I I don't know if it applies, but kids' brains are phenomenal, right? My
Uh-huh.
my 2-year-old. So I'm downstairs with my 2-year-old. We have the baby monitor for the baby that's upstairs sleeping, and the window is open, right? And
Yeah.
car drives by, and my 2-year-old was like, "Daddy, a car!" And I said, "Oh, don't worry, that's just the monitor picking up the sound." And he looks at me. He tilts his head and goes, "Daddy, is sound heavy?" And because I said, "Oh, the monitor is picking up the sound," their brains are absorbing so, so much,
Oh
whether
yeah.
we
Right.
even know it or not.
Yeah.
And even when you think you're talking over your kid's head, you'll be shocked at what they pick
Oh,
up.
they pick it all up.
Yeah.
Our oldest, who was Josh may know this, he was very challenging at a young age, very strong
Yeah.
willed. He turned into a wonderful man. But at one point, my wife was driving and someone stopped short in front of her, and from the back seat, he was like 4. She just said this, "Lady, get going." Where did where did where did you hear that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Classic. Favorite sports team?
New England Patriots.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We let you live in Philadelphia, but yeah, yeah.
Well, you can take the man
Hey,
out of the city, you can't take the city out of the man. So,
that's true. I still kind of have a heart for the Buffalo Bills, having grown up in
ooh,
Rochester.
ouch.
Watching them lose 4 Super Bowls when I was growing up. That was not great.
It must feel painful to see Josh Allen not make it to the Super Bowl, but Drake May make it.
Yeah, well, I wanted, not this round, but the year before, I wanted an Eagles Bills Super Bowl, because then my brother, who still lives in Rochester, we could both be rooting for. And I think Josh Allen's a fantastic
Yeah.
quarterback and good person. He should go to the Super Bowl. Favorite band?
Probably you too.
Oh yeah, okay, good, good, classic. I couldn't even answer that question. I was so amusical when I was growing up. I didn't discover music until much later. What else? What else can I ask you? Favorite quality of your wife?
Ooh, favorite quality of my wife. Wow. She is incredibly thoughtful, right? Like,
Give me an example.
okay, if you have ever received a birthday card, a Christmas card, any kind of gift in the mail before your birthday or on your birthday or before Christmas or on Christmas, my wife had something to do with it.
Well, there you go. So she's super organized, it sounds like,
Well, she
or
put it
or
put
she's
it
thinking ahead.
she's thoughtful, she thinks ahead, like she will buy emergency birthday cards just in case we know someone that's having a birthday, and can write one and get it in the mail. She's just very, very thoughtful, and not just to me, but to everyone around her.
Gotcha. And if you could have, I think you alluded to this earlier, if you could, like, the top person in the history of the world to spend a day with,
Alive or dead, or it doesn't matter.
alive or dead, in the whole history of the planet, yeah.
Probably King David.
Really? Why?
I I am always so in awe. He wasn't a perfect man, right? So I can relate.
That
I
that's for sure.
I can relate to that. But the way scripture talks about him as a man after God's own heart, like, what does that look like in practicality? And I think that would have to be communicated in being able to like hang out with him. I mean, I would obviously kill to hang out with Jesus for the day, but that almost seems, this side
Yeah.
of heaven
Yeah.
untouchable. Whereas King David, I think, is very, I don't know. I would just be intrigued by that. That would, without having more than 10 seconds to think about it, that would be my answer.
Cool. Well, Josh, thank you. I really appreciate, what I'm taking away from this podcast is how the relationalness of your life is played out in different aspects of your life. Your
Yeah.
family, your family of origin, your current family. I get to watch that kind of from afar. I don't know your children personally, but I just kind of get to see them interacting with you at church over the years. And I'm like, this is clearly a family that's close, and their children are very relaxed with their parents. I don't see them pulling away or, I'm 13, you're an idiot, that sort of thing. And I think that's a credit to you and your wife, and also how it's played out in how you've chosen to serve people in the Diacon Ministries, which takes both the heart and the skill, to do it. And so that's commendable. And yeah, I think there's a lot of tidbits people can take from this. And then the whole discussion about children and rules and social media was pretty enlightening to me, because my crew that's not what we were dealing with. But I think for people maybe looking like 10 years younger than your kids, there could be some great things for them to think about out of that. Like, it's not impossible. It's hard, but if you set your face to do it, and I think society is going to be coming toward you, not away from you in the future on this. But I think those are all great things people can use. So I really appreciate your time, bro.
Yeah. Likewise, Clint. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, and yeah, I still remember when you and your wife talked to the young parents group a long time ago, and to hear of your especially your strong-willed son. Some of those stories I still think about. Like, at one point, you have got to talk about the trip to Home Depot.
Yeah. I'll talk about that on another one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just say that my wife and I, with him, we were like death row or CEO.
Yeah. I still remember that. I still remember that. And that was, I mean, that's got to be like, what, 15 years ago you guys did that little parenting seminar?
I don't even remember it, but it's a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah. And, in his case, I was just talking to him today. He's 33 and he's got 3 under 3, and he has got his hands full.
Yeah.
So, but he's a wonderful, the strong-willed nature in him is really difficult as a child because they're just fighting you.
Yeah.
But if they learn to temper those qualities, they become the qualities of you never give up and perseverance and ability to work through stuff and just stay on task. And that's, I think, has borne that out in his life. And he's a wonderful man. But yeah, we had our doubts quite a few times.
Yeah. I bet.
And also, he's very different than me. I am the hider, pleaser, avoider. That's my personality type. And I've had to move out of that. Whereas I'm looking at him and I'm like, dude, I don't know where you came from, sort of thing. But we don't get to be the parents of ourselves. So, thank you again. And when I get off the road and get back in town, I have to say hi.
Yeah. Well, God bless, Clint. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
So there you have it. I think the key themes with Josh were how intentionally relational he is with his children and across the generations, from how he grew up to how he's implementing that with his kids. And then secondly, about the social media and the deleterious effects of it and how they're effectively managing it. Of course, it helps to start early. And lastly, how he's taking his relational skills and applying them to serving other people in the diaconal ministries, those helps ministries, which is pretty inspiring. So until next time, shiny side up.